lacking any resources that we could call discretionary. So I want you all to know that it's understood that the majority of people who are listening to us are not people who have a lot to spare, and that is well understood. We appreciate your listenership, but if at all possible, if it does not put you out, remember that you have this option. One option is to take all your money out of your subscriptions, which you never use anyway, because all they have is boring ass repeat guests again and again and again, the same old tired lineup of people that you've heard ever since you were 12 years old. And you can tell by their ages. I mean, my God, Stanton Friedman, who I've mentioned as a co-religionist with Colonel Michael Aquino, who was called on to basically begin the Roswell myth as it stood as a racist cover, saying that Asian prisoners of war were aliens, etc. Stanton Friedman is well over 80 years old. I mean, the guy's got to be pushing 85, for Christ's sakes. So we're talking about this individual who has been around. You've grown up with this individual. As a matter of fact, 2 generations of you have grown up with this individual. He's been telling the same story since before you were born. He can repeat it in his sleep. And they bring him on, and I can't believe that this guy still draws people in. When I took a look at our most popular guests for Revolution Radio of 2013, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Stanton Friedman, Richard Dolan. I mean, it's just because these people are telling the same bedtime fairy tale that you people grew up with, like Peter Rabbit or something, and you just hear it again and again, and you just derive some kind of comfort from it. It's got to be something like that. It doesn't make any sense. These people have offered you absolutely nothing other than to basically put a Faraday cage around your reality so that nothing enters other than the psychotic fantasy that they've been deluding you with, your parents with, your grandparents with, and you sit there and you approve it as if they're quote-unquote researchers. Now, that's what makes me laugh when I get somebody commenting on these people. Researching what? They're repeating the same thing over and over. How is that research? There is nothing new that they are bringing to the table. So allow me to get a little emphatic with that. But at any rate, they're interviewed again and again on Coast to Coast, on John B. Wells' Caravan to Midnight. Okay, take your subscription money out of those areas, and you're paying $5 a month for somebody like John B. Wells. Now, let me put this into perspective for you. John B. Wells, and we know the problems I've had with him ever since he, according to himself, told me that he was fired from Coast to Coast AM specifically because he kept bringing me on air. Now, I always gave him credit for that. I gave him credit for that for the longest time. Once he got his own Caravan to Midnight, suddenly he wanted nothing to do with me, got very upset, had the same thing going on with Henrik Palmgren of Red Eyes Creations, an individual who interviewed me for 3 hours, edited out an hour because they have a 2-hour time frame. Now, that's obviously a mitigating circumstance. Nevertheless, the hour that he edited out, he could pick and choose what he chose to edit out. And he left parts in that were concerning the death of my mother, which most people interpreted as some kind of paranoid delusion because most people have no real education in medical science. And he took out the part where I was describing the reasons behind my dishonorable discharge, which, of course, whether this is conscious or whether he's even cognizant of how the American people react, because he is Swedish, this just gave everybody an excuse to dismiss everything I said because they had no concept of the background or context of my dishonorable discharge. So then it was just, oh, well, he's totally discredited. And that's their own problem. I've given all of my background behind that on my Facebook timeline, in my About section. It's out there in my LinkedIn and my branch out resumes. Anyone is welcome to look that up 24 hours a day and get some comprehension of the context behind my dishonorable discharge. And what I did, by the way, when you get something like that, dishonorable discharge, you literally have to be committing something like rape or murder, something exceptionally serious. I got that because of murder, 2 murders to be specific, and I would do it again. So you can read the background behind that. Again, access my Facebook timeline, facebook.com/DouglasDwayne-Dietrich. Look in the About section. Now, in terms of what I was contending with both Henrik and John B. Wells, you got these people who conducted one interview, the forum over which they have total control. In Henrik's case, it was Red Ice Creations. He gets a letter from Michael Aquino, and he reads it on air, states it comes from Michael Aquino, and refuses to mention my name, and then swears he'll never have me on his program again. So then we get John B. Wells, who obviously something similar happened to, and again, to further contextualize it, John B. Wells does not need your money. The guy is a trust fund baby. He has a collection of planes. I'm not talking Cessnas. The guy's got jets, private jets. He's got a collection of at least one decommissioned, disarmed military jet. Now, I don't know what it is. I'm assuming it's not an F-15 or an F-18 or an F-14. I'm assuming it's some Sabre jet, remaindered and going to be, shall we say, salvaged off, probably destroyed, that's left over from the Korean War era or something of that nature. But even with that in mind, you don't have that. I would safely bet any single one of you listed out there does not have a decommissioned, disarmed Sabre jet from the Korean War era sitting around that you fly on a regular basis, which he does. He has a pilot's license. You know, he's got on the plane. This guy does not need your $5 a month. I mean, with 15,000 people, he's probably got, he had millions listening to him on Coast to Coast. So he's probably had 15,000 people subscribe to Caravan to Midnight. So what is that? $5 a month. It's $75,000 a month. $5 times 15,000. He's making $75,000 a month off you. And this is a trust fund baby who's already got a collection of jet planes. Take your money out of that and put it into us. Turn it over to subscribing to Revolution Radio, and you pretty much help to solve all of our problems. Think of what we could do with that instead of giving that to him. Like I said, they're at the point now, and I put a link up about this gladly because it shows how pathetic these men truly are. They're down to the point where they're interviewing each other. Jimmy Church was interviewing John B. Wells. I put up the link to that gladly because they're a joke. At this point in history, they have so few people to interview, since they're not going to interview anybody that's going to risk their private kingdom or their little empire. They're interviewing each other. So, at any rate, thought I'd get that out there. That's one option. Your other option, of course, is to simply, as I said, donate $1 this month. If it does not put you out, you can rub together 4 quarters and donate $1 to Revolution Radio. This will help us relocate and reestablish ourselves at a independent server environment, independent from the Googleverse, where we are entirely dependent on these public server boards that have been killing us, that have been taking us out through every show. So I do want to get that out there. And every single one of us as a host has a responsibility as a host or a hostess, whether it's Dr. Levo, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, who, of course, is a psychiatrist who does not use pharmaceutical drugs. She's a psychiatrist who considers them very dangerous. Statistically, of course, she's absolutely right. And so she works with organics or counseling. She's one of the few psychiatrists in the universe to do that. Obviously, she deserves our utmost respect for that. But whether it's her or Sean David Morton or myself or Ed Opperman or Stephen D. Kelly, every single one of us has to remember we've got to emphasize the shape that Revolution Radio is in. We've got to make certain that everybody understands we cannot be on the air without you. Now, some people put their most into it. David Thompson gave $10. Believe me, considering where David Thompson is coming from financially, that's a lot of money. I mean, we're basically talking about somebody who's a one-man Metallica band. So shout out to him. Shout out to everyone who's out there and who's done so much to help us. And believe me, we love all of you. We're forever in your debt. So aside from that, getting back to where we were with what I was mentioning, I had 2 questions come in to me by email. And one of them was somebody asking about what was Michael Aquino a member of, where he had the name of Frater Set-O, or Father Set-O. That was, Frater is the Latin word for father or brother within a monastic enclave, and Frater H was how L. Ron Hubbard was known when he was a member of the OTO, or the Ordo Templar Orientalis. And of course, he was a member of that same group of which Jack Whiteside Parsons, the satanic rocketeer, belonged to. And he, of course, had his own subcult that was known as agape, the Spanish word for love, which was an orgiastic cult based on the sexual channeling of Kundalini energy. Now, in terms of Colonel Aquino, far more repressed, far more of the aesthetic, far more of the celibate in many ways.